Recently on the channel, I shared my discovery of a Dell Optiplex 7020 from Facebook Marketplace. Priced at just $25, this system came with an Intel Core i5-4590, 8GB of DDR3 RAM, a 1TB hard drive, a 290-watt power supply, and even a graphics card. My plan going forward involves upgrading the Optiplex and then showcasing the enhancements along with its performance capabilities in a video. In the meantime, I wanted to revisit the graphics card that came with the system, an AMD Radeon R5 240. The R5 240 was commonly found as a PCIe video adapter in OEM computers around the years 2013 and 2014. The Dell variant I have here is equipped with an OLAN processor built on the GCN 1.0 architecture. It features 384 shading units, 24 texture mapping units, and 8 render output units. The Dell R5 240 has a base clock of 775 MHz and a boost clock of 825 MHz. And with a mere 1GB of GDDR3 video RAM on a 64-bit memory bus, this card is rather underwhelming. As for video outputs, it has one DVI and one DisplayPort. All in all, the card's most practical use on paper would be as a display adapter. Considering that you can snag this video card for under $10 on the used market, it raises questions about its gaming capabilities, if any. Today, I plan to put the R5 240 to the test by running it through various benchmarks and games to assess its gaming performance. Initially, I had intended to conduct more testing within the Optiplex system video, but the sluggish experience due to the Windows operating system running on a hard disk drive was simply too frustrating. However, I've now moved the card to my test bench setup. This setup features the 4-core, 8-thread Intel Core i3-10105F along with 16GB of RAM clocked at 2666 MHz. For storage, I have Windows 10 installed on an NVMe SSD, while a SATA SSD serves as the primary game storage drive. It's worth noting that the card will be running at its stock speeds, although I might explore the option of overclocking it in the future. I would also like to mention that I'm using the 22.6.1 AMD Legacy driver from June of 2022. In the previous video, we established that the R5 240 probably won't cut it for 1080p gaming given its rather disappointing performance in the Unigine benchmarking tools. So for today's testing, we're going to switch things up and run our evaluations at a resolution of 1480 by 720p. This tweak should give us a better idea of how well the R5 240 holds up when the demands aren't as high. Starting with Unigine Heaven, the card managed to achieve an average of 30 FPS, resulting in a score of 752. This essentially doubles its performance compared to the 1080p low settings. Superposition also showed some improvement when dropped down to 720p. Here, the R5 240 achieved an average of 13 FPS and a score of 1705. I had the chance to test CSGO at 720p in the last video. This time, I made sure to set all the settings to their lowest and disable any anti-aliasing. The outcome was a surprisingly stable experience with an average FPS of 71 with very few noticeable stutters. While it's not reaching the competitive high refresh rate level even at this lower resolution, it's conceivable that someone could still enjoy playing CSGO under these conditions. Naturally, I assume that this level of performance would translate well to another popular and generally easy to run esports title, Rocket League. However, my assumption turned out to be incorrect. Putting aside my internet latency issues, the R5 240 struggled to provide a playable experience even at 720p performance settings. With only 19 FPS and occasional drops into the low single digits, the Rocket League experience was far from satisfactory. The performance of the R5 240 in GTA 5 wasn't particularly shocking, but it's always nice to see this game running well on extremely low-end hardware. At 720p with the lowest settings, the R5 240 managed to maintain a fairly consistent average of 43 FPS during my testing. While it's not remarkable for GTA 5 to be playable at 1080p, much less 720p, considering the cost of this card being around $10 or even less, I really can't find much to complain about in this scenario. The performance of the R5 240 in Fortnite genuinely caught me off guard as I hadn't anticipated to be even remotely playable at 720p. Running in performance mode at the lowest settings, the card managed to achieve frame rates in the mid-40s, while I did notice some instances of very high CPU usage during the rendering of certain areas. I believe this performance is likely close to the upper limit you can expect from the R5 240 in Fortnite. Concluding today's testing, I wanted to challenge the card with an older yet demanding AAA title, Assassin's Creed Unity. Running it at 720p with the low preset, the experience was quite rough. The game averaged a mere 16 FPS, the textures looked terrible, and there was a noticeable input delay. Despite the challenges, I managed to ascend to a synchronization point without accidentally plummeting to my death. In conclusion, recommending this card is a tough sell, even considering its current eBay price of around $10. Its usability is rather limited, and the most sensible application remains using it as a display adapter in an older office PC, staying true to its original purpose from a decade ago. Still, I find it very intriguing to delve into the capabilities of extremely low-end hardware and at least consider its potential for gaming. As for the R5 240, if you happen to have one lying around and you're only an occasional and extremely casual gamer, titles like CSGO and GTA 5 might offer an acceptable experience. But for just a small additional investment of $10 to $15, you could upgrade to something like the Nvidia Quadro K620, a card that I previously reviewed on this channel. The K620 can handle some of these games at 1080p, or at the very least, provide noticeably improved frame rates at 720p. But unless you're on a really tight budget, there's actually a variety of GPUs available on the used market at the moment that would significantly outperform both of these options and can be snagged for under $60. I'm currently in the process of acquiring components to upgrade the Dell Optiplex that originally featured this video card. You can look forward to the release of that part 2 video in the upcoming weeks. Moreover, I have a lineup of additional content in the works. If you have any other video ideas or questions, please feel free to share them in the comments. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you.